What we just saw was the excerpt version of Folding. So we didn't see even the total, complete representation of the original production, but Shen Wei, that was so breathtaking.
Thank you.
Just overwhelming. There's always so much to respond to your work, and so I want to make sure that we have time for Q&A to the floor. We have a very tight program today, but throughout the program we will be having conversation together, and our conversation, Shen Wei and I, will conduct sort of on 10-minute intervals after the performances, but at the very end I want to make sure that we do address your questions. So let me dig right in. Let me try to mine your mind. What we just saw, this beautiful otherworldly realm, I know that dreaming and meditation are pathways to your art. And I wonder if this original artistic vision came to you in a dream, or maybe in some form of meditation or mindful visualization. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, everybody, good evening. This piece is one really important piece of my creative journey. I have to go back to the 1998, this piece started in 1999, premiered in Guangzhou in China. I left China in 1995. I was invited by Yang Meiqi to make a piece for the Guangdong Modern Dance Company in China. And I left China already 5 years. Then I said, okay, 4 years. Then I said, come back to make a piece for them. And I made this piece in China in 1999. How this piece being, a huge change will develop from my previous choreographies, then I have to go back a little more than you know why. That it is a big jump or a big develop. I moved to New York in 1995, January. I got a full scholarship from Ivan Nikolai, my Louis. After a few years, finished the program in New York City, and I began to absorb everything else I can learn from this city, which means I start to focus more on dance and painting and also film, even writings. And sometimes I even go back to restudy Chinese philosophy, Chinese thoughts in the traditional art forms. And all those first few years after moved to New York, 1995, I kind of just like a journey start, but I don't know where it ends. And those time, it's not easy time, but also really interesting time, important time for my life, because I moved here and total $1,000, and have 2 big bags, which one bag is blanket, because think about 1995 in China, in economy, and my family is really don't have money to. That I was living in Holland, I was living in Brooklyn, and living like a really poor artist first few years. But another part is like studying all the art forms that I'm passionate about, continue doing a lot of paintings and taking dance classes and also studying film. In 1998, I made my first film that was named called April. I never published. Like, a lot of people know I do things just privately, don't really show to people. Also, that time is a lot of, after a few years, working as a poor artist in New York City, I'm trying to find my own language is my focal point. My own language of in dance, in painting, or in the way how I, artistic vision, because I have all the technique, but all learned from school, from my training, and from my other studies. But for artists, how you can have your own language and also have your own artistic visions. Those times, and doing a lot of testings and also experimental. But at the same time, really struggle in New York City, and I also physically also break out, and I had a little heart surgery in 1998 after film. And after that, my surgery went really successful, and I feel I have a longer, deep breath. Somehow, all the years practice in New York City myself, somehow, for me, reached a place that if I don't have anything belongs to myself, created by myself, I rather not use or not put in my work. Right. Then I began to be really simplified in my movement, also in my paintings, doing things. And those time, I finally reached to folding in 1999. That's how this piece become out. And also later on, the thing follow this flow. And I made a Nida Terrace, and actually by American Dance Festival in 2000, and supported by an Asian Culture Concert. And next also another similar piece in the same category, and also Behind Resonance, and commissioned by SUNY Purchase.
I find what you mentioned now, there's so many times and phases of life and the journey that you've been on since the very beginning. You mentioned, as early as 1998. And I want to go back to this concept of fragility, this physical breakdown. You mentioned you had this heart surgery. I find that dancers have very fragile life cycles. And in fact, the practice of dance, a dancer is anchored by time and is fixed and also bounded by time. And I find this response that you have to time must be really fascinating to see your life on a threshold. This kind of when you mentioned the heart surgery, maybe this mortality, this sort of this liminality that you deal with, because we do see that theme throughout your work, this life and death idea. So can you elaborate a little bit about the concept of time and how you see that in your life as your person and as an artist?
Time, well, I have so many ways to think about time. Technically, artistically, when we talk about dance, it's all about timing. Some time you think 1 second, you can feels like 30 minutes, or 30 minutes you feel like 1 minute. It's the way how you're using choreographically, and of course, the timing in artistically you can really froze in a place. You forgot in time, like a folding original piece of 40 minutes. But when you're seeing it, also many other pieces, you just forgot time because it feels you froze in a moment. Then feels a few seconds, but that few seconds I divide to a long time. That's what I call folding. It's the sense of like you see a flower or fabric and the paper when it folds, the action. But you slow down, you see an emotion, you see a life, you see a journey. And of course, that is, in folding, you can particularly, you can see that time plays a lot. And of course, you pop life, then that will be different, time of journey and changes.
Really, really appreciate what you just said, because I know that this idea of space, time continuum, you are a cultivator, and we do see that in the work that you have, we feel the sense of time very intensively. And I'm fascinated with how you proceed with the technical process of translating the metaphysical visions of such a concept like time and other, life and death, these very abstract concepts, into the language of dance and theater, into our world.
Yes, in my work, besides the movement so important, that is a really important element is how I can put all art form or into to create a total atmosphere, which means involve the way how you see lighting with the costumes, movement with the costumes, and also with the music, and at the same time how those elements related to the emotion of feelings, then those emotions related to what you feel, what you're thinking. And if you can reach it to another level, to philosophical level, and also touch people's soul. That is the total kind of all the elements. It's a theater element to put into my creation. Of course, dance depends. Each work will be different. See my another work called Right Off String, that will be more focused on movement. But folding, actually, it focuses, besides movement, actually another part of form, artistic form, is really important.
Well, I've always wanted to ask you this question. Now I have an opportunity. With folding and with many of your work, we do see this very haunting, ghostly quality. We know that there is this combination of godliness and ghostliness that forges your utopic visions. But we do see the dancers kind of moving about in a not very fully human ways. And I wonder if that's a deliberate evocation when you talk about metaphysical concept. Is this a deliberate intention to evoke spectral qualities in your work?
I'm really a spiritual person. I think, I like to, in my work, involve, besides the artistic point, but at the same time, the spiritual part for me is so important. And I like, I think that I like to feel the human spirit, and are really, really interesting to me. And also the spirit of animals, also the spirits of the plants, also universe. All the spirits is important. Then that's why in my work, that is somehow I'm connecting that level. That's why they are costume, the makeup, everything. That it's not like a day-to-day, people, human life level or the communication. We're communication in that level. That's why you kind of nail down those only human form way that involve. Maybe that is talking about, all the souls, and all the souls in our universe. You will see that in my work.
So it's like myriads of worlds, multiple dimensions. You're completely open. I find it so interesting that you were a child born 1968. Don't mind mentioning birth year, but that was in the throes of China's Cultural Revolution. How did a child born in Hunan, China at that time have such spirituality? What was your first, and when was your first spiritual encounter? How was it like?
And a lot of people know, and I was studying Chinese opera once, 9 years old training, professional training. But before 9 years old, I already studied Chinese painting and calligraphy. And that's a really interesting story. When I was 12 years old, still in the Chinese opera training, but also practice my painting. I do a lot of paint in human figures, and also painted a lot of the Buddha faces. And around I was 12, and my aunt showed me a newspaper in Hunan, in Changsha, local paper. I said, this Dao temple looking for Huang Mo Niang, one of the, for that temple, and you know how to paint it. Can you draw one? I said, sure. I spent a few days. I drew another big painting that was mailed to the temple because they're looking for if somebody who were how to making. I made that painting was 12 years old, and we sent it to the temple. Then they had been hanging that for a long time. I never been to the temple, but I know they got it, and the thanks notes after. That's a time I think it's already have some connections. Of course, later on, I went to Tibet and also making some of the work, also, understanding the Buddhism and thoughts about life, and it really also spiritually connected to me as well.
So in a way, we could say that since you were a little child, you've been on this journey of the soul. And we can see how far this journey has taken you.
Well, yes, I'm going to show you another work. It's also related to the spiritual and soul and connections. It's a much later work. It's a part of a dance work called Triptych, and it's by my journey to Silk Road and Angkor Wat and Tibet. And this work was premiered in New York in 2009, commissioned by Lincoln Center Festival for American Dance Festival and the Edinburgh International Festival. And I think a lot of people saw that, but we're going to do a little excerpt of that piece, then you will feel, well, I'm talking about the human and the plants of the soul of that connections. Okay. Thanks.
Shen Wei, in our last conversation, we spoke about dreams, deities, and ghosts, spiritual journeys that you took. And in this piece that we just saw, we understand that you created this after you went to the edge of the world. There was 2005 and 2009. Between that time, you took many journeys to the Silk Road, to Cambodia, to Tibet, and also Amazon River, to Patagonia. I'm kind of curious if you can share with us why you did this and how did you do it? What was the self-discoveries that you made, and when you came back, what were the changes that you underwent?
I do like to take a personal journey to somewhere alone, because live in New York or even working, really focusedly, and somehow you run into a machine. You just keep going. Sometimes you may run into a place that you may have no way to see where you're going and what you are doing. And I will take time, most of the time, to far away to the nature and spend a few weeks alone and to think about, to see the universe, to see the nature, to see the really organic the world, then thinking about what I'm doing in those years. Even, especially after every big piece premiere, I run away to far away to places. And because I have to see what I just did, what's that mean to my life or to the world, to people, and what's the purpose of my creation to others, what's how I can do for the future. All the time for me is really important, and especially when I was after doing the Olympic in 2008, I opened the 8th of August, and the 9th of August, I immediately flew to the Patagonia, in the glacier, in the cold places, and all the way went to the south to Ushuaia, and to stay there, to thinking what has been done, and all the things you haven't questioned yourself. Also, what my needs as a human, where my soul connect to the universe, and those things is always do that importantly that keep me still going to the day. And I do that in all my creation, and not just dance, for my painting and the film, everything as well.
So when you're so open to all senses and experiences, and even physically, making these journeys, are there certain things that you need to cut yourself away from? You talked about escape, maybe sensation of senses. Are there particular things that you do reject in your sensual sort of tentacles?
Well, life journey is a learning process. It doesn't mean everything I do is the way, a perfect way, and I will still searching, still learning, and that keep me going. May achieve something by you making one work, either one production or a painting or some creation in film. Then it doesn't mean that's the end of the results of everything you can, that's life. And everything's a process. For me, is I'm already always open to, keep grow myself, and at the same time, what's my journey to take for the future? As I'm pretty open for all those, development for the futures.
I know that there was a particular change that was quite radical after you came back from Tibet, and that was the act of breathing. You mentioned this. There was a very key transformation in your dance technique. When you talked about, can you speak a little bit about that? Because we saw that also in the Ritu.
Yeah, that's actually some wonderful, really important physically and dance technically, and developed after 2 times a trip to Tibet in 2005 and 2006. I was having a, backpack, just myself, go to all the north, south, and east, west by myself, sleep in the temples, talk to the monks, and also meeting all the people on the road. And Then we know in Tibet is much higher altitude, which means your physical changes really differently, and everything do things slower than folding, or everything has to be really slow. And at the same time, my brain got really fast, but also your soul still have that kind of really vulnerable and pure feelings, the connection to your spirit. And that make me think, make me feel, but my physically is kind of, it's left out. But at the same time, because that situation, I kind of reached a certain place. After then 2006, I back again for myself, another 2 weeks. Then after back to New York, I locked myself in the studio and said how I can get the feeling I have and the moment I feel in Tibet when I physically in that situation, breathing really slow and deep to get the oxygens, but at the same time, my brain and my feelings getting so pure in another state. Then few weeks, I locked myself in the studio at the city center. And 3 weeks, I should turn the lights off because I really don't want to see the world, the studio. I can't transform myself to that place. Then I started discovering my breathing have to change the way I'm breathing right now with the way. Then I have a technique, and it's kind of difficult in the beginning, but after a while, really helps me a lot. Then I can really breathe into, really deep the way. It changed the way I'm breathing right now. I'm still in the same way I developed the technique to breathing. That technique later on, as one of my dancer, and her name's Lindsay Clark. She's not in the company right now. She also physically really fast adapted my concept. And I just take her in the dark room, have little lights. I say, I'm going to do all the movement. You have to write down and remember. Then when I wake up, back to normal, then you need to tell me what the phrase is. Then she has been following me for a few weeks. Then she remember all the things. Then I open to my dance company dancers. I have 12 dancers those times. Then I train all my dancers. That's like a 3 or 4 months journey to teaching this technique of breathing. And only 4 dancers can be okay to close the way I want. Then Angela made the first piece only 4 dancers. That's called Re Part 1. It's part of the Re and trilogy. And that will premiered in the George Theater, 2006. And this technique has been with me all the time. I really know how to direct my chi, my breathing, and since today, I can just stay there. I can just change my breathing system. My whole body start to getting sweat, and just even don't move. Either way, it's so interesting. Maybe people think it's qigong, but I think it's just the way how I direct my chi, my breathing. That I made it first dance, all my movement from Re Part 1, all based on this technique, how you move deeply through your body, which means it's not least by, dance world, we say this movement is not least by your muscles. It's not least by your breath, your inner energy or your bones. Actually, it's by the way how you're breathing. That the quality of the movement is so deep and pure, and that's called Re Part 1. We didn't do today because that's going to take. This generation haven't learned this piece yet. It takes a little while to rehearsal. You want to see it next time.
And I wonder, because you were so involved with developing this technique, I wonder if you apply that the same to other practices. For example, painting. I know that you just came back from Paris. You were there 3 months, and you did nothing but painting. Also, in a self-imposed isolation, you were putting yourself in a room, not a dark room because you had to paint and there's light. But I know you did nothing but painting. And I would love to see that other path.
It's so interesting sometimes when you, of course, we live in New York, we have to get out after 3 months. Like say, even just a few days, then you feel, okay, I have that kind of oxygen come back to this, the speeds, the energy. Sometimes I don't have that time to really calm down to feel myself and to listening or to sense everything around us. Of course, your brain not really thinking the things you're supposed to think rather than just rush everything through day by day or the agendas. And yes, I always lock myself like when I paint, I also don't want anybody in my room. I have to prepare the whole journey from the morning, and that when I'm in that state, when I start paint, I don't want to have noise. I don't listen to music. Rose used to use music, but the last many years I don't listen to any music. I have to be really quiet. Then into the space, then I can really feel and sense things. Then I can be, totally transcend. Then also my work being transcend as well. And I may just show some slides of my painting that you will like to see another part of, my journey with me since I was 6 years old. Let's see. We're going to talk at the same time when you see some of the slides. I select some of the work, only few, because in the future you will have a chance to see original works. Those work, we're selecting some of the work from 1985 to 2017, if I'm not here. Okay, the first work you will see on the left, left. And it's a piece I did in 1985. I remember when China is open to the Western world, like Western culture and arts into China in the early 1980s, I actually been introduced by the Western fine arts. And I used to before that, I was doing Chinese painting calligraphy. Then I really loved it. And Da Vinci, when I saw his drawing, and I was just like, wow, I would like to learn how to paint like that. And I began to study Renaissance style. Then that's in the same time, I made this first painting I gave to my parents, because my parents also in the Chinese opera. And also I was in Chinese opera and studied in the opera company. I made the same kind of feeling of the Chinese opera profile, the Chinese opera makeup and the style, but with Renaissance of technique of the C shapes. And,
it's like the Renaissance profile portrait, right? In the dark background, I can see that. Yeah. And I also see the neck. Is that inspired by Modigliani? I know that's one of your...
Yeah, the long neck of the feelings. And there is another twist in here is I made a hand of a Guanyin hand, Buddha. Do you see that? If you know the Chinese, they hold hands like this. Usually do that. Yeah. And I hold that hands, but it's not a Western hand or Chinese opera hand with a Guanyin hand. I don't know how that happened because I used to do a lot of Guanyin, and Buddhas and drawings. That's
very interesting because because of that hand, it calls into the question of exactly what this portrait is. I mean, we wonder if she's a secular woman playing the role of a deity in the guise of Guanyin, or were you depicting Guanyin in a human revelation in the thousands of guises that she takes. So I really like the insertion of the hand. Yes, and you're right, there's but hardly any hand above the torso in the Renaissance portrait. So I really like that little.
Yeah, and this one is almost 10 years later, just a year before I left China. Of course, in between I have so many different pieces, but that one is a self-portrait. I already in dance, modern dance. You can tell I lie down on the floor. And those are still in Chinese opera. You see, the paint, also the subject, also related to my life too. That was a Chinese opera because I was in Chinese opera. That was in dance, I was on the dance floor.
And that's really interesting because we actually, in the history of Chinese art, portraiture, I cannot think of an image of self-portrait in that posture, because we naturally see that you are someone who's very comfortable. You have this innate awareness of the ground, and you're extending your body on this plane. So, I mean, even the Western art, we can think about perhaps one image, which is Christina's World from Andrew Wyeth, but that's a very unique painting.
Yeah, this is my cat. I have a cat.
Yeah. It's just a cat with the sun. Very adorable.
Okay, the next one, big switch. I already moved to New York. Just moved to New York. I was in a place you don't speak English. I have no money, and I live in way far away in Brooklyn. Then this all my bed I have is a mattress. Nothing else. And a lamp and a desk. For a few years, I lived in that. and have the wind comes in. Of course, you not like now we know, now where you can, the phone's so cheap. In those days, if I make a phone to China, it costs a fortune. 1995, 96, international course. I cannot talk to my parents maybe twice a year because so expensive, because I don't make much money also, those time I live in Brooklyn. I can't pay that phone call. And I left that. I didn't go back to China until 4-5 years later, which means because it takes expensive also. And I was facing a place like a passion for art, learning everything, go to theater, paint, film, dance. At the same time, my soul was going to be, that part. And I was asking myself alone, and I made this painting, and it's also self-portrait. That's the cat is self-portrait, this is self-portrait, and myself.
There's a shadow above this
Yes.
self.
And talk about the soul. I always have a shadow in all of my works. I like shadow because that's a layer of ourself that you cannot change them. It's the truth who you are. And also, you always know there's another you inside speak to you and follow to you. Then it's like your soul, or when you have your own, when you're alone, you have to think in those things and asking yourself. Actually, it's a dialogue to yourself, which means I do paint a shadow on the wall for myself and sitting behind me.
I love that there are three selves, one who's painting this, and the one that's depicted in the sort of the past, future, or even this dialogue, this negotiation between hope and doubt, and it's a fascinating portrait of that time when you just first.
At the same time, the film also in this Unite After Days is about the same. The film, my earlier film, also about the same subject of a journey of as artist. Okay, let's go to next one. That is not a change. People who know my dance will know why the change. Fan folding goes to behind resonance, then it goes to right off string. That's my artistically is a huge change. I'm talking about I found my own movement language. Besides theater, set, costume, everything, searching for movement. I want to search in my own language in visual arts as well. And those time, at the same period, I made my dance piece right off spring, really abstract. And at the same time, I also spent years discovering who I am, what language in artistically I have. Then I go back to my early choreographer training, my movements, my music, and often right off screen that kind of period, my also visual art. It's been changed since 2000. Also, it's after my heart surgery. Everything changes after the new millennium changes. Everything.
Shen Wei, I'm just going to sort of comment. Actually, it's fascinating because this kind of dancing calligraphy, the deconstructed strokes, but all in different directions. There is a tradition of spirit writing in Hunan. This shamanistic, spirit mediums, when they tune themselves to the changes of the seasons, they go about dancing and singing, and then they actually leave these graphic records of bodily convulsions. And, it makes me think about the fact that you're responding to Stravinsky's, Rite of Spring, and there might be something, a different layer of reading here as well. Yeah. It's fascinating.
That's a spiritual layer, maybe. Let's go to the... I have to do this, sorry. Didn't go through?
Yes.
Okay. That's the finished one of Rite of Spring. This one I started when I played music. When music finished, my painting finished. And it's a huge piece. It's like as long as the entire stage. And I have all the brushes around, different brushes. And I immediately choosing brush, choosing space, choosing dynamic, choosing the how the arrangements just responds to the music of the energy and dynamic of the changes in the structure of the music. But at the same time, in movement and flow and power. At the same time, the structure in visual arts, which we talk about, all the balance.
I think you can see even the contours of your brush, very full body exertions.
This is one of my recent work, which is in 2013. There's another jump. Find those I keep doing, continue pushing develop my own technique in visual arts. Also my, now you can see that is so add into my visual art as well, which means you do feel that is a journey of a human being of that spiritual way. In this painting, since 2000, I started develop my own technique in abstract paintings, and 13 years later, I really feel that really technically and also spiritually really get to a point I feel I really have my own language, and it takes more than 20 years since 1999 to get to this place. And this is the exhibition I did last few years, doing so many exhibitions last few years. That's one we did in Miami. It's one that the scale of one of the paintings is 10 meters long, and that has been shown in a lot of places.
This is amazing because a 10-meter scroll, we almost become complicit in this performance of the relationship between the movement and the art, which is the central theme to your work. I find it, you can see the undulation, the rise and the fall, the crescendo of colors, the explosiveness, the sudden collapse. These are sort of upheavals that we experience as we walk about, because it's 10 meters long. It's a very long scroll. So either you have to move back this way to see the whole totality of it. So I find this too, the interactivity, between the viewer and the painting and the body and the art is prevalent in a lot of your works as well. But this is a masterpiece. And I see there's a profile. Do we see a profile?
Yeah, it's a profile.
Is that a winged beast or dragon coming out?
Yeah. Okay, that's the newest one you may see in 2008. Not the newest one, that's from last year. This year took me 3 years to finish. And that is reached another point from my, the black, white, and gray series painting are being exhibition. This one is first time to show to the public. Have nobody seen this work? I have never exhibitioned yet. And this is so far one of the work I really spent so much time alone discovering technique and also spiritual and also meaning what our form could reach to how deep, with another people. And that's a really important deep dialogue with myself.
And this is like the grand synthesis of your inner mind. It's like the inner space of you turned inside out. I see this as almost strangely archaic. It's very primordial universe, changing, evolving. Just it's incredible. And then you almost see a bird-like figure. Is that a phoenix rising on the end? And it's very difficult too. It's visually very complex. And technically, to achieve these drips, can you talk a little bit about the technique or the materials that you used in this piece?
I'm using acrylic and oil, which means a really difficult combination to work on. And because I achieved of my early training of a Chinese watercolor training, painting training, also later on my Western oil painting training, which means from Renaissance to Impressionism and all the influence to me, but what's my touch in that develop. And also the abstract element. I also will talk about what's the soul of a connection through abstract work. You have to speak to something. That speaks to me, and that's the soul part of my work. And they give you a lot of, every time I see it, I can lit up, but you also get into the place. Just like you see floating or my dance pieces, you're into a world. And that world is my painting. Always when you see it, you just stay there for a long time because a lot of details, you can go through it, go into those details.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing that's really different about the way you work the canvases. I know that even one painting you work on it for many years, over 5 or 6. I think there's one piece that you worked over for a decade. So it's really unusual, your sense of time.
This will
and
take me
dedication
3
to work.
years to
Thank you.
finish because that is something didn't really spoke to my soul in the right way. And I have to change, constant change until I feel it's the right place. Then I say finished. Okay. Thank you.
We haven't seen enough of the paintings. I know we all had a selection, but
yes, and one, and I want to show you another. My recent piece also to do with a feeling of a human soul and also journey of human lives. That's something we always question ourselves. And it's a piece, my recent piece called Neither, or called Neither, is premiered at Brooklyn Academy of Music 2 years ago. And they commissioned. And it's a piece, it's another side was talking about human soul and journey, and based on Samuel Beckett's writing and also Morton Feldman's music. I just want to show a little excerpts. Of course, this is not the total piece of the world, but I want you to feel there is a touch of connections between the dance walk to the soul of, in that connections. Okay, let's,
I want to say after Neither, we actually go right into the film, which is the film premiere of Inner Shadow of the Movement. I want to make sure that we have a lot of time for question and answer, so we will not have a conversation between. We'll get right to it.
Okay, you're going to see two things together. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you.
Okay. I'm not going to ask any more questions.
This
I'm
is
going
a
to
film premiere, and well, and in the future we'll show more films about my previous ones. And usually I'm using 16 millimeters black-white films, but this one suppose is the architect Ma Yan-song who designed this building and who finished asking me to, invite me to. You can make a film here. You can use any place, anything you want. I've looked at the location, also seen the lights and all the things, and I come up with this concept to make a film that related to in only art forms, sculptures, architecture, dance, and music, and then make so connections. And also that's the basic idea to giving a pure art connections to this film. It's a really short film, but it's something I like to do. I did all the editings and trying to make things work. It's a really interesting journey. I made it 2 years ago. I didn't want to show to people until this location. I said, okay, show people, and maybe when I have more things, then I will show my previous ones.
I wish we could see the 1998 film that we also, the other day we saw. Shen Wei, when he first came here in New York, I think it was only 3 years after, he made a film for himself. He's never shown with anyone. And we talked about maybe, yeah. So, okay, let's, two questions we have time for? Oh, really? Oh, no. Can we have many short questions? Okay, 2 questions. Anyone?
In the back? Yes. Yes. Yes.
Thank you so much. I wanted to ask about your use of color, specifically the red and black in the piece Folding, and sort of what inspires those decisions across your dance and also your painting and your film.
Color is a soul that has its own life. Each color gives different sensibility and feelings. Of course, how you combine them also make another story. For me, when I studying, during the period when I studied Impressionism paintings, then this color really gives another different senses. That's all about the color, what's going to be sides, and what's a combination of the whole visually element. For folding, I basically only using 3 colors, which means the white, face and the body color, the floor, and the black, the costume, and the red. I use those 3 simple colors because I want giving that message much clear about black and red, and also the skin tone of a little, that is my choice. And if people see the near the terrace, it's a piece I made. There are even more detailed colors, like grays, different grays and the white, and a little red or black. For me, the color is really important because each color gives a different sensation, and that also plays different meaning in the whole composition. That balance also is important. And for my painting, many years doing only black, and black, white, and gray. Then later on, the colors started to introduce a little brownish, then yellowish. Then my recent work has more colors. The things changes by your journey of the life, also your way of discovering colors. And when you reach a certain place, you understand that color, then you move on, maybe to discover something else that related to the journey of your time.
The question is over there, the lady.
Yes, a journey is always open, and people know that I have been really want this human being and life and universe always a subject of my my passion, and I travel different places is really important for me, and a different part of a human being, a different way of life, living, and also beliefs. And people also know I recently opened another painting studio in Paris, and also keep my place also, and here, and more in the more globalized of the way of communication with the people I have connection with, and love Paris, and also love New York. And also, and in the future, I also doing more production in China as well, like this year. And that will be another place I will have another space open in China. Maybe in the future, having more, I involve all the people who where I live, and to work with and develop the culture of and all the different places. In the end, is about our world become more understanding each other, to have no gaps, also appreciation of all the culture, and also our vision become more feels like a one family rather than divided. And I think that will be my take for the future. And art form-wise, also dance, theater, painting, opera, and the film will be anything that if I also wanted to continue. And of course, for everybody here, I can invite you guys going to, if you're interested, next month I will doing big show in closing musical festival in Shenzhen. That will be, and it's another production we're doing in China, and also in Shanghai we're doing a big exhibition in the Power Station, the Contemporary Arts Museum in Shanghai. And if you all interested, you can travel with me around the world. And definitely, and I do have so many here, have many really good supports here that do travel with me to Naples, to China, to Beijing, and to Europe. And I hope if you believe me, and and my doors open for everybody joining me, and I'm keep making my art, and that's my passion. Thank you.